Oh,
This is
sorry.
John for the Everyday Fan. Today I'm on the beat with Ray Lloyd, former wrestler, current actor, and we're going to talk about his projects. First, we're going to get a little bit about your wrestling career. How are you, sir?
I'm good, John. I'm doing really, really good. Thank you. I'm down here full time in Orlando, Florida these days, which is kind of a great place. You know, it's got because all the theme parks and tourist attractions, all the family wants to come visit here, so I don't have to travel to see family that much these days, which is nice.
Sounds perfect to me. You're looking good, man. You're looking like ready to
Thank you.
in ring shape, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Normally, I know it looks kind of odd. I'm sitting in our kitchen here right behind my refrigerator, but we got a brand new refrigerator. So I thought I'd show it off here. Look at this.
Nice.
It lights
Oh,
up
look
and
at
everything.
that. Oh, you big show off.
I know, I know. So I figured, why not show it off? I'm sitting right here.
Hey, why not? So
So,
let me ask you about your wrestling career. Obviously, famously, you were Glacier. How
yes,
much input did you have into that character?
you know what? Thankfully, and I say this it's so humbly and sincerely that I I have you know I thank Eric Bischoff so much for allowing us to have a lot of hands-on input with all that, and my all-time number one favorite quote in the world is, "It's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you, who's willing to put their name and reputation on the line to open up a door for you," and that's what Diamond Dallas Page did for me. I moved to Atlanta in 1990 to pursue the wrestling dream. I broke in April of '87 and was in South Georgia. And I moved up there and I was teaching school and I joined Lex and Sting's gym where all the wrestlers worked out and kind of got in the fold a little bit. And through a couple of my other mutual friends, became friends with Dallas. And we had a similar work ethic. I don't know if anybody has a work ethic completely like Dallas. He's
Yes.
an anomaly almost, but he saw my drive, my determination, and eventually it took and there was some times along the way, but eventually, I signed with WCW. I met with Eric, signed in January of '96. So, but it still took a while. I had to work hard, be patient, and then that one meeting with Eric, it's like I always tell aspiring wrestlers. At that point, I knew I was ready. I knew I was ready. And I knew that all I needed was an opportunity. And so I felt like Eric sensed that in our meeting and our conversation, and it changed my life. And as a matter of fact, I actually recommended to Bischoff the studio, AFX Studios, who actually Andre Friedez, who was the owner of that, an amazing movie special effects artist. He ended up interviewing Andre, and Andre came on board full time, and Andre and his studio and all of his staff, they were the ones who really created everything from drawing board to finished product. But we had an awful lot of hands-on input, which was good. I mean, because when with personas that were that extensive and that detailed and really had never been done before, I think it was just mandatory that you have a lot of hands-on input, and thank goodness that Bischoff was allowed us to do that.
No, I think I read that one of the details you put into outfit was your
Yeah.
father's badge number.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was both of my parents were career Georgia State Patrol. My mom and my dad. My mom was the first woman to ever reach the rank of lieutenant, and when she
Oh,
retired, she retired about the time I went into WCW. She she was the highest ranking woman at that time in the history of the Georgia State Patrol. And my dad had a very storied career himself. And so his badge number 126 was always something that was really near and dear to our family because he had that for almost 30 years.
wow.
And my twin brother decided that he knew, I think, ever since he was younger, he really wanted to get in law enforcement. I never had the call, and I truly believe anyone who's a first responder, especially law enforcement who goes out there and does what they do every day. I think it's a calling. I mean, you don't answer an ad in a newspaper one day because you're bored and go, oh,
Right.
I think I'll go do that. But my dad was getting ready to retire about the time my brother was finishing up trooper school, and he had a lot of clout back then, so he was able to pull a few strings, and to my brother's surprise, because none of us knew that when he graduated, they give you your badge when you walk across the stage, and they give you your assignment, and they gave my brother, my dad's badge and badge
Oh,
number.
wow.
Yeah, it was really, really cool, and it meant a lot to our family, and that was, I think, in around 92, 93, and then um and then my dad retired, and then unfortunately, very unexpectedly, 2 years after my dad retired at 57, he passed away
Oh,
from
sorry.
had a brain aneurysm and passed away, and so and that was about around April of '95, and then I got my break in WCW in less than a year later, in January of '96, and so that was a big part of it. I was still really hurting from
Sure.
unexpectedly losing my dad. And my brother and we had great parents. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of material things because cops don't make a lot of money, but we had a good,
Unfortunately.
yeah, we had a good stable home, and there was always a lot of love in our home, and so and that's something that as I get older, well, I realize how fortunate we were. But so when we started, exactly what I mentioned earlier about when we were allowed to have a lot of hands-on, in that process of developing, everything about our personas, and that was something I asked for when the armor, when everything was coming together. I just asked Andre, hey, would it be possible to kind of work the numbers 1, 2, 6 into the chest plate? And of course, he was so gracious to do that, and I thought he did an amazing job to where I didn't even talk about that for probably the first few years. I never brought it up. I never mentioned it. And most people never noticed it. And then eventually, I think I mentioned in an interview, and then of course, it's like one thing is like once you mention it, everybody could see it,
Right,
But it
right.
was it was a nice, just a nice little, homage, a tribute to my dad and his career and how much that badge number has meant to our family. As a matter of fact, when my brother decided to retire, he actually spent about 2 years handpicking the person that he would sit
Oh,
down and
wow.
offer the badge number to. And
That's
unfortunately,
awesome.
yeah, that gentleman said yes, and and so it was passed on to somebody with a lot of thought and just in a lot of care, and thankfully, that's someone who's carried on the tradition. But and I'll tell you another great thing. Well, I'll save a little bit of footnote about 1, 2, 6. I'll save a little footnote if you can help me remember when we start talking about the film. There's a way that the number comes back around a couple times for the film.
Absolutely. Just one more question about your wrestling
Yeah,
career. Obviously, you were in WCW during the big NWO thing.
yeah, dude, the whole
Was
time.
there, first of all, was there ever any talk of you joining one of the many factions? And what was it like to be there during that insanity?
You know what? I don't ever remember, there being any talk of like me and Ernest Miller and Canyon and Mortis and Raph becoming a part of that because eventually, we kind of all broke off and did our own thing. But so there never really was, as far as I remember. But I can tell you this. I honestly, John, I tell people all the time that, and I love the fact that wrestling seems to be going through somewhat of, I've heard people say, a renaissance period here now. I mean, just recently with WrestleMania,
Yeah.
breaking all kind of numbers. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people around the world watching wrestling and loving wrestling now, and which I think is just awesome. But I'm just telling you, like there was nothing like living through that period where everywhere you went, people were talking wrestling, and we were selling out the big arenas, for Monday
Right.
Nitro every Monday night. I mean, and I remember when I first came on board, I was right there, kind of, because I came on in January '96, and then right around May was when Hogan was revealed as the third man of the NWO. So I was there very right before it all started, and I was there pretty much to the bitter end. But it was. I will say this, John, and this is the one thing I always say that I hope it allows people to kind of understand what it was like during that period. I mean, it was so. I mean, everywhere you went, like I said, and when you had people doing watch parties, colleges and just businesses, everybody. It was everybody was watching. It was cool to be a wrestling fan, and I don't think it ever hasn't been cool to be a wrestling fan, but it was just really
Right.
cool at that
Yeah.
point. But the thing is too is like, I always say that that whether people were a fan of Glacier or not, which in wrestling we all know you can't please everybody. So there were people that I've learned over the years that the overwhelming majority of people really enjoyed it. A lot of people loved it. There were some people who didn't like it. It wasn't their thing, which I totally understand. But I always say that the greatest thing that came out of me going to WCW and being there during that era was that the one thing that will go down in history is for those 5 years. I originally signed a 3-year contract, and then I signed a 2-year contract. So and it expired around January of '01, which was only a couple months before everything kind of went away. Was that you know I was a part. I such an honor to say that I was a part of one of the greatest rosters, pro wrestling rosters of all time. And week in and week out during that whole 5 year period, during the whole rise and fall of WCW, I was there to see all of that. And and I held my own and I earned my spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because during that time, especially, boy, I mean, like any competitive field, there were people lined up to take any spot that would become available, So
Right.
so I had to fight and claw and scratch to keep my spot, like a lot of people. But other than that, I always say my greatest accomplishment ever in the wrestling business, because I grew up such a huge fan, me and my brother, because my dad took us to wrestling in the Jacksonville Coliseum and stuff, and is that to be able to walk into a locker room full of wrestling dignitaries and legends, and to be accepted among that group, to have a seat at that table, as they say, is what I consider my greatest accomplishment in the history of my career. And I'm at 37 years, right? This month,
Sure.
April, I
Wow.
broke in April of '87. So here we are, April of 2024, 37 years later. And now it should, to me, growing up a fan, not even thinking I would ever really get into wrestling because I didn't think I was tough enough to do it. We can imagine that. But to be able to be among the greatest. I mean, to give you an example, I was just on the phone driving. I was driving back to the house to get here on time. I was on the phone with Haku. I mean, he's become one of my closest friends. And every
That's
time I talk
cool.
to him, I just kind of like smile a little bit, like like me and Tonga is like family, which I love.
Hey, I feel the same way. I mean, I was watching you as Glacier, and
Oh yeah.
right before the interview, I went, well, I'm going to be interviewing Glacier. Like, so I know
Well,
the
that means a
feeling.
lot, John. Thank you, man. I really thank you. That means an awful lot. I don't take that for granted for a second. I promise you.
No, totally. Well, you mentioned Haku. You mentioned
Yeah.
your contemporaries. A bunch of them
Yeah.
are in your movie, The Unbreakable Bunch. I
Yes.
watched the trailer on it. Although it was a short trailer,
Yeah.
it excited me. I liked what I saw.
Oh
Tell
yeah.
me about it. How did it come to be? What is it about?
Well, it's first of all, if anybody wants to know more about the film, because I'm sure I'll mention this later, is you can find out everything about, because our social media icons and everything are on our website, which is the unbreakablebunchmovie.com. The unbreakablebunchmovie.com. And when we went out, we had so many people who were willing to really help us with this. I have a saying that whenever you set out to do something with really good intentions, the universe kind of comes together to help you a lot. But, not always, but a lot. And,
Hopefully, usually.
yeah, usually. But when you do have those obstacles, sometimes things just happen and work out where you never really anticipated how they would, but they did, and they did. But good friend of mine whose name is Robert McLaren. Robert is the webmaster for all the DDP's, all of his stuff, the DDPY and all of his wrestling stuff. So we got a really great webmaster to oversee our website. The website's a really fun website. If you go to it, it has a little bit of a running reel of some of the footage from the film. It has everybody that's in the film. And just to kind of give a little rundown, I mean, what we wanted to do, my producing partner now, Luther Wilson, who we met at the power plant back in '96 and became fast friends, and we're still close friends, and here we are, co-producers on this film. But yeah, there's everybody from I always I usually hold Tonga to last, but since we already talked about it, I mean, Tonga Fafita, which the world knows as Haku or Ming in WCW with us, legendary wrestler in a lot of ways. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
world tag team champion with Andre the Giant. And of course anybody that's watched wrestling for any period of time knows the legendary stories about Tonga and how tough he is and how just how strong and powerful and how much a great wrestler he is. Of course, all of his the lineage as far as so many of the great Polynesian wrestlers throughout the decades. But yeah, he has just a great role in this movie. And I always say with Tonga is everybody we know what everybody expects to see Tonga do, to be that guy who's a lot of action and and yeah, and we give that definitely. But it's funny, like I was seeing a lot of comments recently because on the movie poster, most of us have guns in the poster, and Tonga has a gun in the middle. And so many comments were like, "Why does Tonga need a gun? He's like the baddest man on the planet," which that is true. I agree. But I always say, think about this. Like, of course, we know that as well as anybody. So if there's a point in the movie where Tonga needs a gun, trust me, there's a really good reason for Tonga to need that gun.
Good
But I will
point.
say this: we didn't disappoint. There's plenty of action where Tonga doesn't have a gun, and he's Tonga being Tonga, doing his thing. But yeah, Tonga Fafita, three Hall of Famers in the movie, and legendary wrestlers as well as Tonga. Is Diamond Dallas Page has a great appearance in the film. The Lariat Hansen has an amazing role in the film. The living legend Larry Zbyszko. And it's funny. In this movie, Larry really looks like the whole time we were filming, we all kind of were kind of joking about that as he walks around because he's Larry has very much of that great whatever that air is, that it factor he
I
has.
agree. Yeah. Yep.
And we always said he just walked around. He looked like a kind of like an old Hollywood legend walking around on the set, and he plays that demeanor so well. But Gangrel Dave Heath makes a great appearance in the movie. Big Ron Reese, who was from Ravens Flock back during our period, and also probably more affectionately known as the Yeti.
I remember.
Yeah, just and tons of other notable athletes as well as two-time world heavyweight boxing champion Pinklin Thomas. We were fortunate enough to get him, and man, he just came in and he played a role in the movie, knocked it out of the park. And Pinklin Thomas was, he's in just about every boxing Hall of Fame there is, and fortunately lives here in Orlando, where we shot most of pretty much the whole movie here in Central Florida. But yeah, that and just a couple of AEW faces that people will recognize, particularly Anna Jay. Anna makes an appearance as a female ring announcer in the movie. We actually shot a lot of the film. We shot right before COVID hit.
Oh wow!
And so we were expecting it originally. This movie would have been out a lot sooner, but we got most of our principal photography done, and then obviously we had to go on hold for maybe almost 2 years, and then pick back up and finish and reshoot some stuff. But and there's a lot of other great actors in the movie that are great professional actors that have been in a lot of other great stuff. Julia Denton, who is our female lead, amazing actress. We were so fortunate to get her, and she's played opposite of Paul Rudd, Jennifer Aniston. I mean, she's that level good.
Oh, yeah.
And
Totally.
And yeah, and so and then for any of the Walking Dead fans out there, you'll notice a really recognizable face in our movie, Adam Minovich. Adam was Walking Dead ran, I think, for 12 seasons. And one of the main characters, Carol, endeared throughout the whole 12 seasons. The first season or two, though, she had a very abusive husband named Ed. And eventually he meets his demise, from the zombies. But Adam Minovich played Ed, her abusive husband, and he still does tons of appearances at the conventions for The Walking Dead and things like that. But and then we have Mark Ashworth, who's just an amazing actor. Mark actually was in the remake of The Magnificent Seven with Denzel and Chris Pratt, and as they played the small town preacher in that, had a great role. And then Nick Logan, who plays Alexander the Great, the young kind of cocky wrestler that comes in with our group, he's an amazing actor who's did a good bit of stuff before he worked on our film and has done tons since. And I think he's someone who's going to have a long and storied career as an actor. So we found the best we could get in wrestling that made sense for these characters, and then we also got the very best actors we could get to basically raise everybody's game, and so we're really proud of it. I mean, and I will say, because I know we're here only a limited time, but as far as the movie goes, because people right off the bat say, what's the movie about? And I always say, just imagine, because Luther and I were big fans of the ensemble cast films of like the 60s and 70s, like The Magnificent Seven and Wild Bunch, and more recently the Expendables, and we're also big fans of Johnny Carpenter and films like Halloween and They Live, and Escape from New York, and just all those great Johnny Carpenter movies. So, and of course, in They Live stars one of the most legendary, iconic wrestlers ever, Roddy Piper. We decided to take a story, and I always say it's, the Unbreakable Bunch is Magnificent Seven meets They Live. And what if those two worlds collided? So that's what we did.
Well, that gets me even more excited because I love both those movies. And I looked at your cast list, and like you said, I mean, at one hand, I'm looking at it going, that's a roster of Hall of Fame wrestlers. And I'm looking at it going, those are really solid actors.
Yeah.
I mean, I was amazed at the quality across the board. It wasn't like you just had 2 or 3 names and then the rest filler. It's quality top to bottom.
It really is, and you know, and the thing is too, my excuse me, John, is that when you make a movie that's basically people hear pro wrestlers versus aliens, you know, they automatically think, oh man, how bad is this going to be? You
Right.
know, so I get it, but that's one of the things that we went in knowing, okay, well, a lot of people their bar of expectation may be kind of low, so you know, we want to come in and really not only obviously come in and surprise them, we want to hopefully really surprised them. And there's certain things in making a movie that we learned on. I mean, I've been acting for a long time
Yeah.
outside of the wrestling world, and you know it's a totally different ball game than the pro wrestling world. But what there's certain things for like when especially independent film when you're making independent film, there's certain things right off the bat that you can usually the things that kind of knock you out of the as we say, suspending disbelief. You know, it's
Sure.
like a wrestling fan does when they're watching wrestling. Is if the sound is not good, the picture can be good, but the sound maybe not good, or the color is not good, or the music isn't good. Just those things can take you out of, or it's not shot. You can see the boom mic in the corner and stuff like that. I mean, that's just it takes you out of the moment. So we really, really, really worked hard to make sure that those things were all quality, that the sound is as good as we could get. We were so fortunate here in Orlando that we teamed with a lot of the technicians at Full Sail University here, which is where WWE NXT
Yeah.
used to tape, and
Yeah.
and we were able to go in and so the sound we had really really top people working on the sound, so the sound is great, the color is great. Believe it or not, we actually were able to do almost all completely original music for this as far as
That's
soundtrack.
cool.
Yeah, and one of our really great friends, country music star Steve Azar, who's been a great friend of me and Luther for 20 years, actually loaned us one of his songs, a song that
Oh,
was a pretty good hit for him back a while back, and so it just once again the universe came together to really help us. And I will say this, as far as the film itself, it's a when I try to describe it, in a quick, little description. I always say, it's a movie we want it to be a fun ride, but it's a fun ride in the sense of there's a lot of professional wrestling scenes in the movie. There's a lot of action in the movie. When I say, once we get to the point to where obviously the two worlds collide, which is this group of veteran wrestlers gets together for one last tour for this really good cause, and then also the viewer sees this parallel story of this small Florida town where this alien presence is starting to take over. And then eventually, as we go through our tour, we cross paths into that small town on one of our days off. And then all of a sudden those two worlds collide. And then, here we are, and we have two options. We can either turn tail and run, or we can stand with the townspeople and take back the town. And I'm pretty sure you know which one we
I was
choose to
going to say,
do.
I'm
So
pretty sure I know which path. I got
yeah,
to ask you, you told me to remind you,
yeah.
126.
Yes, here's a couple of things. Is one, there's a mention of it in the movie, which I think just it works perfectly, and it's a little Easter egg for my friends and family and wrestling fans who know the story about 126. But once again, it's funny how the universe comes together to help you, John, and I'll send you this link so that you can post it as well. But
Sure.
we're very fortunate to have partnered with Imagine Entertainment Theaters, which is the ninth largest theater chain in the country, and they are based mainly in the upper Midwest. So they're in Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, and just amazing. I mean, top notch theaters. And so we actually our opening weekend is coming up this weekend. We're actually headed up to me and Luther. He's already there. He just drove up this weekend, and then and Haku, Tonga, and Ernest Miller. We'll all be there Friday the 19th, and I think probably Saturday too, live there at the theater to welcome the fans to come see the movie, and which we hope is it's certainly going to be exciting for us. I
Yeah,
hope a lot of
yeah.
people turn out, but it's funny, like when we put the movie together and we did the final cut of it. We wanted the movie to come in like around an hour and a half, because that's what these movies typically. You don't need it to be any longer than that. And
Right.
so and that's kind of the time frame that people expect. And ours actually came in a little under that. It actually came in the final version came in at 86 minutes. So when I sent it off, it didn't click in my head at the time. And when I saw it on the theater website, you imagine it said 1 hour and 26 minutes, runtime. And
That's
I just thought,
awesome.
man, wow, that's a nice little,
There's a
nice little,
sign.
yeah, a nice little sign, and I certainly choose to believe that it is,
I
And it's just it was well, I'd say it was a pretty cool moment when I
I
saw
got,
that.
yeah. No, it sounds, I mean, again, to me, reading the synopsis, checking out the cast list, seeing the trailer, I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a
Thank
fantastic
you, thank you.
movie. And
It is really it honestly, John, it's a movie, and here's the one thing I really want to make sure to two things to hammer home to the anyone listening who I hope will come out to see it. We have our theatrical release, and hopefully that's going to run for a little bit. We're in our final negotiations for our distribution deal. We got with a great company, and if everything falls into place, we'll be. And of course, I can certainly follow back up with you when we get
sure.
ready to launch all that. We're looking to hopefully, uh, make that announcement as far as where it will be seen, all the streaming services, hopefully by about the 1st of July. So
Okay.
that's all in the final works right now. It's all definitely going to be happening. But the other two things I wanted to mention about the film is that one, we were really big on making a film that we felt like everybody could sit down and watch. And even though our film got an R rating, if you notice when you look at the tag, all it says in the tag, where it usually says nudity, violence, blah 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 for an R rating, ours only says it literally only says some violence.
I saw
and
that.
it, and
I
it's
saw that.
I don't know if I've ever seen an R-rated movie that said just that.
Exactly.
But I can tell you that there's literally no profanity in the movie. There's no what I call over the top gross humor, like there's no projectile vomiting and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that that doesn't have its place in movies, but none of that really fit into our story.
Sure.
So and a lot of that was just kind of us challenging ourselves as we do as wrestlers. How can we be more creative to not just go to the obvious, in the easy outs? How can we really, really be creative? And as far as not having any of the profanity in the movie, Luther and I were both like we wanted to challenge ourselves and say, okay, let's make a movie where the dialogue is really entertaining to where hopefully no one really misses that or even notices, and I
Hmm.
think we did a really good job of that. But and there's the what I call the action in the movie is more of it's not necessarily violent action. Yes, there's gunfire and explosions, but I always say that it's anybody that's us around our age remembers the A Team back in the 80s, the
Yeah,
TV series, and is back when the A Team, there was a lot of gunfire and explosion and stuff, but no one ever seemed to really get hurt,
that's true.
or killed or whatever. So
Right.
in ours, where there's some people getting shot and shot at and stuff, but in the movie, it's not it's that action to where I remember Hal Needham, Burt Reynolds, director who directed Smokey and the Bandit, famous stuntman. He said one time that action doesn't have to be violent. You can have action without it being violent. And so even though ours we have gunfire and explosions, I always say it's more of that 80s A-Team, sci-fi style violence, or action, not violence. But yeah, it's a fun ride. And the main thing that other than those things I mentioned about the making of the movie itself, the parameters, is just the story. And I know you as a wrestling fan I know you can appreciate it, but I'm hoping the viewers will understand how much trouble we went through to really, and all of our writers, we kind of had to kind of steer them all back on track to basically we wanted a story that makes people feel good about loving pro wrestling,
Okay.
and because there's really not a lot of movies out there that make you feel good about being a pro wrestling
Good
fan
point.
or just loving pro wrestling. And there's movies that have that show that dark side or they're super hokey and cheesy and I get all that. I do. But we had never really seen a movie that says that when we watched it made us want to sit up a little bit and say, wow, I'm glad I like wrestling. This movie makes me proud that I like wrestling. And so we made that's the movie we set out to make. And what I mean by that is like there's mainly six main characters, that we all come back together, and mainly it's me and Luther, Tonga, Ernest, Larry Zabisco, and then Nicholas Logan, who plays the young wrestler called Alexander the Great. But the one thing we want to make very clear, because we do the typical, my character Jock Holiday goes to recruit everybody to come back on the tour, and kind of like in the Magnificent Seven and the Expendables
Yeah.
and stuff. But we wanted to make sure that when the viewer sees each one of the characters that he goes to recruit, that they're all successful in their own right, that they've been successful after wrestling, and some of them are still involved in wrestling, but it's more like because they choose to be, not because they have no other option and they're old and broken down and this is all they can do. The we've seen that before.
Yeah,
And
that's
we wanted
true.
to show some different side of that. And also, when the guys get together and they go on the road, we want to be able to show and as we talk about, the three words that really describe our movie are camaraderie, loyalty, and friendship. And that's what we wanted to show with this group of guys. And I'm man enough to sit here and say that this group of guys, you get to see how tough they are, but how much they care about each other, how much they love each other like family, and how much they will stand side by side with each other no matter what. And they're all completely different personalities, which makes it
I'm
even
sure.
a
Looking at the
greater group
list,
of guys. So yeah, it's a movie that our main goal, if I had to sum it up, and I know I've talked about a lot, but I mean, if I had to sum it up, is we want people to, when they watch this movie, to feel good about loving pro wrestling, because that was our goal when we made it.
well, I'm excited. Before I let you go, I will
Yeah.
have the information on the screen the whole time, but in case somebody's just listening to this
Yes.
and not viewing it, tell everybody where they can find out the information.
Absolutely. You can go to our website, which is theunbreakablebunchmovie.com. Once again, theunbreakablebunchmovie.com. And then on any of our social media, and I have to give a shout out to Evan Polisher, our social media manager. He's done an amazing job. If you search any social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, especially on Facebook, we seem to have a great following on Facebook, on X, any of that. Just all you have to do is just search the Unbreakable Bunch movie, and it should come up. But and then on our website, there's all the social media icons there too. You can click on. So, and the trailers are there. Please view the trailer and like it. I mean, all those thousands of views we've gotten so far, it just helps us when we go to negotiate for to go into other theaters, because that's definitely our
Sure.
plan and our goal is to branch out throughout the rest of the country. And if we have those strong numbers to go in and negotiate with, it just makes it an easier negotiation for us to get into other theaters.
Well, I'm excited about it. I encourage everybody to check out the Unbreakable Bunch, check them out online, and then go see the movie. I'm
Oh,
excited for
please.
wrestling. I am a
Yeah.
wrestling fan, and I'm excited that you want to show that all good sides of wrestling and reality.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. Ray Lloyd, really, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've a fan of yours for a lot of years.
Oh,
And
thank you,
like I
John.
said before, the younger me would not believe I'm talking to you. So I appreciate your time. I wish you good luck, and yeah, hit me up anytime for any updates.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back on and maybe give an update after we do this initial theatrical run, and when I have the final information for distribution. I'd love to come back on and give everybody an update.
It's an open invite, my friend. Just you know how
Thank
to
you,
find
sir.
me. Just hit me
Thank you.
up.
You got
Ray
it, man.
Lloyd, thank you
Thank
for
you
your
again,
time, man. I
John.
really appreciate it.
Man, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thanks.